Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Oluwabumi Obafemi. Today, I'm talking about unraveling myths and healing from generational trauma. It's a topic taken from our text materials, uh, chapters 2 and chapter 6 of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome, written by Dr. Joy DeGroot. I start with this symbolic image to demonstrate to us the interconnectedness of human beings. These pictures depict or symbolizes what we are as a nation. Its truth as deeply rooted in the ground. The root itself is connected to the system, and that is what makes it whole. So it does mean that every part of these trees depend on each other for survival. I liken it to what American is. With regard to our race, whichever race we belong to, we all depend on that interconnectedness. In fact, it is that unity that binds us together, that makes us a nation, irrespective nations of the world. However, if we look at what is social realities of Africans Americans in today's world in America, we will understand the pains of being a Black person. This draws my attention to the text materials when it talks about the myth that surrounds our history of pains, history of victimizations, history of oppressions of Black Americans in today's world. This myth, I define it as a kind of things that are created to discredit African American. Most importantly, this myth, they portray peoples of color as an enslaved person or an inferior person, a subhuman being. This idea then tends to subject people of color as someone who cannot handle a good job or who is not fit to take a positions of authority. In a way, what they are actually implying is that people of color can only be meant to take an odd job, a subservient positions, a job that maybe a white person might not really want to take. This myth also has continued to encourage victimizations and exploitations of the Black people. And we have seen it all around us with police enforcement, with law enforcement rather, how they have continued to be those that are supposed to uphold law, those that are supposed to protect human life, they are also an agent of victimization of Black communities. So in a way, if we are to look at this, how this myth perpetrated, we will say that culture is part of things that foster it. We can also look at the legal system, especially with that three-fifth constitutions, legal constitutions of America, which is also dehumanizing. And we can also look at religious institutions. They have continued to be a means of fostering it to the extent that this myth has now becomes a kind of social norm in America. And when we look at it, it's not just in terms of how these myths are perpetrated, we might also look at how people now continue to internalize that racism. And this internalization, we tend to see it displayed when people exhibit it towards this kind of behavior, this negative attitude, like Goffman have said in terms of how stigmas unfold in society, just to discredit the individual. It does not mean that that is who the person is, but it just means that this is how individual is perceived by the other. On the part of cultural miseducations, we might want to look at it to see it as a mechanism through which these myths are perpetuated, and those things that encourage these attitudes of indifference to the plight of African Americans today. The role of media, the role of literature, these cannot be overemphasized in terms of the atrocity that they have contributed towards the plight of African American citizens. Media have continued to distort the narratives, the social reality of the situations, and this calls our attention to the idea that perhaps this is the time that we need to start the education, or if possible, re-educating ourselves on the impact of the harmful narratives, to change our story in a way that makes our present generation to have a better understanding, trace the history back, and if possible, to use that opportunity to reshape our future. And I use this symbolic reference here to depict that we need to start that conversation. It is now. And on the aspect of transition to healing, like our text materials, be it Sheila Rowe, be it Lewis Giggett, and even the current one that we're reading, Dr. DeGroot, they all acknowledge that the very first part to healing is, first of all, acknowledging the pain, acknowledging the past. And at the same time, we need to start reconnecting with each other. I use this symbolic image that this aspect of reconnection to our roots, to our heritage, reconnecting and even getting together is something that we should nurture. That is what I use to represent. I use this plant to represent that we should nurture it with care. And above all, we should recognize our pain and create a safe place through which we can foster healing, encourage each other. And again, from our text materials, I drew the attention to these ideas of therapy, community healing, even spiritual guidance. They are all ways through which we can receive care, through which we can support each other. And most importantly, we also need to start reconnecting with our values, that values of connectivity, that values of engagement, that values of support, that collectivism spirit. We need to start reestablishing it and make sure that we foster it, not just here, not just in the present, but also to make sure that the future generations have a clear understanding of this value and embrace it. Empathy is another way that we can use to break through this oppressive and traumatic experience. And I use this bridge to demonstrate that this broken bridge, in order for us to survive, we need to do what? To make sure that we rebuild it. And a way of rebuilding this is to first of all understand history, and also make sure that we see healing as a journey, a process of journey. It's not something we can attain in a day. And also we should start educating ourselves, playing advocacy role in order to combat these systemic issues affecting our time. And at the same time, I believe that for us to move forward, we need to start that conversations in order to develop a better society, a safe society for us. That freedom, that sense of justice, that means to emancipation is through dialogue, is through taking action that we can make a change, live in this kind of society that we want. On this note, I want to say this is an opportunity for us to ask questions, and if there are none, I leave us with one question here to say, how can education and dialogue contribute to healing societal trauma? On this note, I want to say thank you all for listening.